Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good time to really just jump in and elaborate a little bit more on that negativity that this game got, because we've chatted a little bit about it, but you can look at the numbers and see how much this game was getting dogpiled. I mean, before the game even came out, there were a lot of YouTubers making videos on how this game was going to be a failure, how things weren't looking great, the developers weren't, promoting the game at all prior to it releasing. I mean, in part, that's why Aaron and I are kind of talking about it, because we were thinking, well, do we talk about the game before it comes out, or do we talk about it after it comes out? We ultimately landed on after for a few reasons. One, it matches our release cadence to talk about it in this kind of a way. But people wanted this game to fail, I think. I think it's very clear that they wanted it to fail. And before I end this quick point, because I don't want to forget, I think that's illustrated by the fact that day one, the game had an overwhelmingly negative score on Steam. And since day one, that score has only gotten better, to the point that as of the 2nd of February, it has a mixed rating on Steam. That is a massive leap in terms of like people shooting positivity the game's way. And again, I've played this game. I played 2 rounds with a friend last night. It is not a game that I am going to play probably ever again, but it is not an overwhelmingly negative experience.
Yeah. I think there are really only 2 reasons that games ever get to overwhelmingly negative on Steam, in my opinion. That's not actually true. There's never only 2 reasons for anything. You have your broad categories of general dislike, but the main reasons would be it is genuinely an egregious title. Performance is terrible, value's not there, monetization is egregious, something like that. That can absolutely push a game to overwhelmingly negative. The other category of overwhelmingly negative is you have lost control of the narrative. Or somebody has harnessed control of the narrative and is leveraging it against the game's Steam rating. That's the sort of thing that we saw with Helldivers 2 during that entire ordeal, where the game was being purposefully review bombed because of the PSN requirements on Steam. In this case, yeah, it's 100% people are jonesing for this game to fail. And I think some of that is because it feeds the content machine. I think some of it's because people want to be part of a meme. I think that there are actually probably players who regret missing out on Concord because they think it would have been funny to have had an experience with Concord before it died. And I think that a lot of those people have launched themselves in that very early window at the Steam reviews to jump in. They didn't have to actually buy in like they would have with Concord, and they want to be in on the big new thing to dunk on. So they show up, they log a couple of hours, or they don't, and they drop this, scathing review that's basically just a meme, and then move on with their day to the next thing that they can, enjoy in whatever way they want to. And I don't think that those reviews are coming from an authentic place of good faith criticism, which almost feels like a ridiculous thing to say now that I say it, because of course they didn't. I think that based on everything I've seen, the mixed is a much more sort of accurate representation of people's experience. And I think the fact that even as the player count has plummeted for this game, the review scores have begun to climb into that mixed territory speaks to the fact that a lot of the people who are now reviewing it are doing so in better faith than that initial overwhelmingly negative wave.
Yeah. I mean, and to my earlier point about the overwhelmingly negative, I should have also brought up that the game hit a max CCU of 97,000 players, which is pretty crazy. Like, it's not actually that crazy. I mean, there's games like Arc Raiders that hit almost 500,000, right? Like, it's still air quote baby numbers, but 97,000 players is a lot of people to be looking at a game. And to your point, Aaron, that fell off within 24 hours to about 10.5K. So a lot of those 97,000 players were just tourists. They just wanted to probably participate in the mockery of this game. And I will say, if the game was good, it would have held on to players. Like, these people may have started
yeah.
playing maliciously, but if it was a better game, it probably would have held on to players. Like, you can look at the Metacritic reviews, and it's got a 69 Metascore. Nice. So clearly it's just an average game. Like, it is truly just an average game, and that's fine. But then if you look at the user score, which is out of 5, right? If I'm not mistaken, or is it out of 10?
So.
Well, the user score is a 2.4, which is worse than the Metascore.
That's going to be out of 10.
Yeah, so it's not looking great from a user score perspective. But again, I think this game has fallen into meme territory, and it's suffering a little bit more than it maybe deserves to. Now, I do want to clarify. Like I said, I've played the game. There are certainly like weird floatiness issues. I was actually able to play the 5v5 mode. One of the criticisms of the game was that the maps were too big and it wasn't a very engaging experience at 3v3. It's like a decent enough experience at 5v5 in terms of, players. But there are issues with this game, and Aaron and I are not trying to defend the game's quality.
Yeah.
We're just saying, does it deserve to get memed on to the degree that it is being memed on? I would say probably not. But you can certainly criticize the game, and you're allowed to hate this game. It's just clear that this is it's a trend to hate on this.
Yes, it's definitely it's the hot thing right now to glom onto this game as a perceived failure, and a fair amount of that, I think, of course, does rest on the marketing, and regretfully, a fair amount of it does also just rest on Geoff Keighley, because encouraging the team to take that last spot definitely set them up for a lot of eyeballs on a game that maybe was not presented in its best possible light, but it also set them up for a very confused marketing rollout, because a lot of the Dead on Arrival stuff started when this game has, the podium at the biggest event of its kind for the year, and then disappears up until a few days before its actual reveal, release. And that led people to wonder if the negative reception to the Game Awards trailer had caused them to just drop the game entirely. Maybe it was vaporware. Maybe it was so Dead on Arrival that they were just going to quietly shovel it out onto Steam and then pretend like nothing had ever happened. And that fed into the narrative. And, the vestiges of their original marketing plan being what they were, namely silence until reveal, just did them no favors there. It spun this story out of control and allowed the memification to take place. And then the memification turned into vitriol because people were angry that this game dare exist in the first place. You'd pulled an interesting quote of something, of a similar sentiment to that. But yeah, I just not trying to defend the game against its very real flaws, but rather contextualize its, metatextual failure as opposed to its experiential failure. Because, again, good faith criticism levied against a game is for the benefit of the industry, in my opinion. I think the same way that I will continue to talk about all of the amateur filmmaking problems present in Iron Lung, despite the fact that a gajillion people went to see it because they love Markiplier and they're going to leave positive reviews on it and everything like that, that does not absolve the film of its sins. It should still be criticized as art. That's just the way that, in my opinion, that should work, because that's how we learn. That's how we dissect. This game, by virtue of people bullying it, it doesn't necessarily deserve all the pats on the back, but it does deserve its shot at fair criticism, which it evidently, for a variety of reasons, really just kind of hasn't gotten.
Well, I think the main takeaway from a lot of these marketing beats is that you need to, when you're trying to make as big of a splash and put yourself out in front of people like, this team did, you've got to make sure that you're ready for that splash to occur, right? I think the biggest sin that was committed here was they just took this sweetheart deal before they were ready. Like, one of the things that comes up in a lot of the videos we watched, in a lot of the articles that we watched, is this game, or read rather, is that this game should have had more beta testing. There should have been more testing. There should have been more feedback, because there is fun in this game. I did have some moments of fun in this game. It was not like a slog. It's just kind of awkward and clunky because they're trying to merge all these different elements from all these different genres. And I don't think that they've found the right like weighting or mixture. And I'm sure that they could have. I legitimately think these are talented developers, but I think that they needed more feedback, more public testing, etc., to really like hone in this experience. And they also just needed better marketing materials. It becomes very clear when you look through like this story that they had a bunch of materials of people like playing the game that were influencers or media outlets, but that I don't believe that material was recorded until after the Game Awards, because they recorded it, I think, in early January leading up to the release. And then they were going to, bombard us with all this information about the game, vis-a-vis Apex Legends with its shadow drop. So don't pivot your entire marketing strategy just because someone gives you this sweetheart deal, but that sweetheart deal like contradicts the entire marketing strategy that you originally had. Like it's just, they pivoted directions too late into the game and were not able to create the appropriate amount of visibility following the Game Awards to combat the inevitable negativity that the game was going to generate. And ultimately, that is on the developers to do a good job of navigating that.
Yeah, I think that in this instance, depending on how sort of persuasive Geoff Keighley was in regards to like pushing the developers, I'm not implying that he actually did, because we don't know to what degree he really like strong-armed anybody, but depending on how persuasive he was, a certain amount of blame can be laid at his feet for even suggesting this at all. But yeah, 100%, the ultimate blame does really lie with the development team and whoever was in charge of their marketing to make the decision to take that spot. And I understand the allure of that spot. It seems like a foolish thing to pass up if it's offered to you at such like a significant discount. But the rest of your marketing campaign cannot proceed as if nothing has changed if you're revealing your game a significant period of time before you meant to. You have to have material to support that new reveal strategy, because a big splashy reveal at the biggest spot ever is not compatible with a shadow drop marketing strategy. The two just don't mix. They just don't mix. And that, I think, is probably the biggest sin in its PR sort of world, was not trying to more elegantly bridge the gap between those two things, being unable to bridge the gap between those two things, simply not having the time, not having the resources, whatever it is. But it's evident that trying to pivot / fuse a shadow drop with a big splashy reveal in advance was a confusing and confused way of trying to show your game to the world.
Well, the problem, too, is you've only got one chance to make a first impression. That classic thing that you hear all the fucking time. And they made a bad first impression with, millions of people when they decided to be unprepared when they showed off that first trailer. And I don't think Geoff Keighley was like strong-arming or being like a weird salesperson. Everything that I've seen suggests that he legitimately believed in the game, so much to the point that he had this really kind of funnily, it's aged really funny, post where he's like, "You're all going to be apologizing to me when the game comes out because, implying like it'll actually be good." Obviously most people don't feel that way, but I feel like it's clear he cared about this project and wanted to support the developers. I don't think it was like a malicious thing, but
No.
I think he probably should have had more foresight in how this could negatively impact that team. I don't know. I do think a part of the blame falls on him. I do not think a lot of it does, because ultimately he's not a developer for this game, but I think the intention was pure. I think he should have been smarter about some of this. And I also just kind of candidly question a lot of Geoff Keighley's involvement in the games industry, because if I'm not mistaken, he's not a developer. I don't even think he was a business development guy. I think he's just kind of an independently wealthy... Was he a journalist for a long time? I don't know.
I think he was a journalist, and I think his father, rest in peace, was involved in award shows and various like media production stuff, and he just kind of always wanted an award show.
Yeah, but I think he just like inherited a bunch of wealth and then was like, I'm going to do this thing with a lot of it, which... You know, there's things he's done that's been helpful for the industry, but my bigger point here is I don't think I trust Geoff Keighley. Haha, he killed stuff. He killed this game's chance of success. No, I just don't think I trust his opinion on games very much. I think he has some weird taste, or at minimum doesn't really understand how to like promote games all the time. Like sometimes he does, but sometimes he doesn't. So, I don't know. I think he should have known a little bit better, but who am I to say that?
Yeah. I mean, far be it from me to criticize a man's passion. Like, if he legitimately, if he was, you know, going around and he played this game and he said, wow, this is fresh. This is not like anything I've played before, and it's also not like something that we've given the last spot at the Game Awards to, right? Normally we give this to games, and he even said this in the lead up, right? Like, we give this to games that are years out and whatever, and now we're gonna show you something that's coming out in just a couple of minutes. And maybe he thought that was a fun new angle. Maybe he thought because it was a small, more independent studio, it fit in with the narrative of the, you know, indie success that he was trying to spin over the course of the award show, rather than contradicted it, because it's AAA devs. It's possible that every bit of his intention here was pure but misguided. But misguided it was one way or the other. And yeah, on that level, I think that he definitely does deserve a little bit of, if not like actual lambasting, then certainly at the very least sort of playful mockery. Because yeah, I do kind of have to question his taste in games. You do kind of have to question whether he's just a, you know, a very well-paid salesman. But yeah, you'd think that at this point, this far down the line for this award show, he would have been able to read the room and predict that people might not be stoked about a free-to-play shooter taking that last spot. There's other places in there that he could have revealed the game.
Yeah,
I probably should have been able to figure that out.
I think in short, that's basically what I'm getting at, right? As I was fumbling around my words before, what I really meant to say was this man should have a better pulse on what players want when he's literally one of the main vehicles for people seeing, you know, between players and developers. Like his venue, his event that he runs is one of the main ways that people learn about new games. He should have a better finger on the pulse. And the fact that he didn't have a better finger on the pulse, I think is a little bit questionable, for, you know, when you're trying to take advice from this guy. Even if Geoff Keighley's a nice guy, I'm sure he's a nice enough guy, like whatever. But like, I don't know. Next time he tries to offer up someone a slot, I think they should really think quite a bit more about whether they take it or not, because I'm not saying Highguard would have survived if they didn't take this spotlight, because I think the game has a lot of issues, and I don't know that it has, you know, what it takes to really be a super successful games as a service, live service game, but especially when it's free to play. But I mean, it did not do it any favors. It absolutely did not help it find its audience. It did not help it look better in the public consciousness. I know that there's, you know, the saying that there's no such thing as bad PR, but I mean, I don't know. I think there is such thing as bad PR when your game isn't like actually amazing, because your game has to be fun for people to want to keep playing, and the game's fine. It's just very generic, and it's kind of just missed its time from like a genre perspective. I just think we're moving out of these hyper realistic hero shooter. Well, it's not even hyper realistic, but like generic fantasy meets gun hero shooter kind of thing. I think we're moving out of that. We're moving into more stylized indie kind of games that feel indie. And this game just feels like it's trend chasing, even if that's not really entirely fair to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one way or the other, intention being whatever it is, the way that this game was revealed and then subsequently marketed rather poorly definitely took what would have been a quiet it definitely took what would have been a quiet sort of game and turned it into a Concord 2 narrative. And I think, yeah, it, you know, whether every criticism of the game is inherently fair, the point is it got off 100% on the wrong foot and had a much bigger hill to climb to prove its worth or its promise at the very least. Like, hey, come back, check us out. We're going to be continuing to work on this. There's more good stuff to come. Yeah, all of that got buried under a mountain of reactionary anger and confusion and frustration and memes. And that was the joint effort of a miscalculation on Mr. Keighley's part and a miscalculation on the team's part in terms of what their marketing could actually, achieve and handle following that particular reveal.